I introduced the steps for dividing in the last video. However, if you're having trouble remembering the order of the steps, you can use the division family to help you remember. The family members are ordered from oldest to youngest, so Dad is the oldest, and D for Dad is D for divide. Mom is next, and Mom for multiply. We have an older sister, so sister for subtract, and then a bratty little brother. So brother is B for bring down, and then they have a dog named Rover. So Rover means repeat. Some other things that you want to remember, and these will make more sense and I'll be referring to them as we actually do the problems. When we're setting up polynomial long division, we need to insert zeros if our polynomial has any terms missing, going down in descending order from the highest power all the way to a constant. When we're subtracting, we need to remember to subtract all of the terms of the polynomial, not just the first one. So we will put that entire polynomial that we're going to subtract in parentheses to remind us that that negative sign distributes. Finally, as I mentioned before, the solution to a division problem is going to be written as the quotient plus the remainder over the divisor. And in this case, our divisor is going to be a small polynomial. Let's go ahead and look at our first example. We have x squared plus 6x plus 12 is divided by x minus 3. So let's set up our problem putting the quotient and the divisor in the proper locations. So our divisor is the x minus 3, the thing that is being divided into the larger polynomial. So here we go, and whenever you write this long division problem, be sure you leave yourself enough space up here to be able to write your quotient. So we're going to take x plus 3 and divide it into x squared plus 6x plus 12. So notice here I start with an x squared term. The next thing I have is an x term, which is an x to the first power, and then finally my constant. So all terms are present and accounted for. We're not going to need to insert any of those zeros I was mentioning just above. So let me show you how this works. Instead of looking at the entire divisor, what we want to look at is just the first term of the divisor. So in this case, an x. And what we want to ask ourselves is, will x divide into x squared? So we'd be looking at x squared divided by x, and yes, we can do that, and our answer would be an x. Whenever we write part of our quotient, we want to make sure that we align like terms vertically. When I say how many times will x divide into x squared, the answer is x times, x to the first power times, but I'm going to write that answer up here. Now, remember our second step is multiply. So x times x is going to be x squared, so I'm going to write it under this x squared that I have. And then I also have to take x and multiply by negative 3, so that I'm going to get a negative 3x. So this is my multiplication, and now I'm ready to subtract. I'm going to put a negative sign out here, but remember that we need to put parentheses around our entire polynomial to indicate that we are subtracting the entire polynomial, not just one term. So let's do that. We have x squared minus x squared. Well, that's just going to give me a 0. So you can write the 0, but you don't have to. The next thing is I need to take 6x and subtract negative 3. So think about that. Subtracting negative 3. Those two negatives are going to become a positive, and so that's actually going to give me a 9x. The next thing after subtracting is bringing down. So in this case, we are going to bring down plus 12. See how everything nicely aligns as we go along, as long as we make sure that we line up like terms in those vertical rows. So now we ask ourselves, how many times will x divide into 9x? So we're going to say 9x divided by x, and that's going to be equal to 9. So that's what I'm going to write, is a positive 9 up here in my quotient. So plus 9, and now we're ready to multiply. 9 times x gives me 9x, and then 9 times negative 3 gives me a negative 27. So I've done my multiply step, and now I'm ready to subtract. Remember to put the subtraction sign out here, the negative sign, but this entire polynomial goes in parentheses to remind us to subtract everything, not just the first term. If we take 9x and subtract 9x, we have a 0. If we take 12 and subtract negative 27, then those two negatives again make a positive, and we are going to get 39. We've run out of numbers. We brought down this 12 already. There's nothing else out here to bring down, so we're done, and this is our remainder. So let's label that as our remainder. And remember that our final answer is going to be written as the quotient, which is x plus 9, and then our remainder. So the remainder is a positive 39, so we will say plus 39, but we need to divide it by x minus 3, which was our divisor. So remember, it's remainder over divisor. So let's just go ahead and point to that as being the remainder, so that this was the divisor. And then, of course, the main part of our answer, this part right here, is the quotient. So our final answer is this entire thing, quotient plus remainder over divisor.